Hi, my name's Ivy Potter, and I'm doing a reading log for one of the Newbery winners. The book that I chose was The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. Here is the cover. This was a really interesting book. I really enjoyed it. It was a pretty long book, about 400 pages. Also, the illustrator was Yuda Anada. I believe I've said her name right. She did a really wonderful job. She showed a lot of movement in her illustrations, as well as really portraying the sadness of the city through her illustrations. This is a fantasy, and it's geared towards older children, about 10 to 14 years old. The publisher is Algonquin Young Readers. So this story is kind of set a little bit differently. Obviously, it's a fantasy, but it's a kind of a magical story. It really clicks into your imagination. And it takes place, or the setting is in the city of Protectorate. And in Protectorate, there's a group of elders who are in charge. And these elders have a group of women who are soldiers and kind of do their work for them. And once a year, they take a child from the city and they take it into the woods to a witch named Zan. And they do this they say, to keep the city protected. And the main character in the story is Luna. And she was one of those chosen babies to be sacrificed. And she was raised by the witch. She had two pets. She had a pet dragon named Furion and a monster named Glark. Luna was a special child because she was fed the power of the moon when she was a baby. And when she was young, that power was suppressed. But when she turned 13, she had access to the full power of the moon, but having that access caused Zan, that witch, to die. And during this time when Luna was being raised, her biological mother was locked in a tower in the city of Protectorate. And there were two individuals in the city, Evan and Antane, and they didn't agree with what was going on. They didn't agree with the elders and the soldiers taking these babies and sacrificing them. And that kind of brought those two together, and they created a family of their own. And then they found out that their child was going to be the next baby to be sacrificed. So they made a plan together to kill the witch and prevent this from happening and kind of protect the city from the witch. But when they were doing that, they found Luna, and they found out that the elders had been lying to them this entire time, lying to the entire city. And they also found out that the woman who was the head of the soldiers was an evil witch. And so the elders were locked up in a tower, and they found out that the evil witch had been kind of feeding off of and depending on the sorrow and sadness of the city. And she ended up dying because obviously things turned around once everyone found out the truth. One thing that I would say about this book is it really strikes the imagination. It's really fun. It's good for children because of that, and it really enforces perseverance. As you read about Antane and Evan, they really showed that you don't have to follow what everyone else is doing. You can question what's going on and kind of question authority a little bit. This book kind of reminds me of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs by Walt Disney. The main characters have a lot in common. They're both sweet and kind, but they've kind of been hidden away from everybody. Also, there's comparisons in the stories, like there's an evil witch in each story, the scary woods, unusual family and friends. You know, Snow White, she had the animals in the woods and the dwarves. Luna had, you know, she had a dragon and a monster as her friends. So there were a lot of comparisons with those two stories. An activity that I would have my class do, since this is kind of geared towards older children, I think a good activity would be kind of a reflection or a response to the story. There aren't really any, you know, right or wrong answers, but it just kind of allows them to evaluate what they've been read. So a few questions that I would ask is, what do you like or dislike about this particular book? How do the evildoers in this story compare to others that you've read in other books? Do you agree or disagree with what happened in this story to the evildoers? Or another question would be, are there parts of the story that relate to your life? So things like that, it just kind of opens up and helps them just relate to the story. And I think that that's good. You know, you can always find parts that maybe relate to your life or things that you liked or didn't like about a book. So I think that's important. It kind of keeps them engaged and I can learn about, you know, what was important to them in the book. So that's the conclusion of my reading log, and I thank you very much.